The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
To be the best, one must beat the best. Ovals, road courses, the streets of iconic cities, race after race, the top sim racing IndyCar stars will battle it out. In sim racing, it doesn't get any better than this. This is their battleground, for the checkered flag, for the glory, for the right to say they are the best. The cars and stars of the Lionheart IndyCar Series, presented by Butt Kicker, are ready to race.
The Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, stays in the desert for a second week of action as the drivers in the Lionheart IndyCar Series swing into the championship rhythm. Adam Blocker took victory in our season opener, but it was Sage Karam domination last time out on the streets of Long Beach. Today we go short track racing for the first time this season, with qualifying expected to be just as crucial as it was last time out on the confines of a street circuit, as we get underway with a thumbs up cancer down Phoenix 200. Hello and welcome back to RaceBot TV and coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series powered by HyperX. makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit www.hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. I'm joined by Justin Prince once more for today's coverage. TV cameras are provided by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com, with additional car cameras provided by RaceSpot's own Tyler Maxson. You can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to timing71.org to follow along with your favorite team and drivers in the real and virtual world of motorsports. Let's dive straight into our pre-show presented by Butt Kicker. And Justin, 2 rounds into this season, and each of our championship favorites has come out swinging. Sage Karam will be missing today's action due to the NTT IndyCar Series testing at the Brickyard, but Adam Blocker has found a simulator to call home from Indianapolis himself as he focuses in on his quest to win 4 consecutive Lionheart IndyCar championships.
And it's going to be very interesting to see how Adam adjusts to his surroundings tonight, because this is going to be one of the most difficult races in the early portion of the schedule. A short track, which has seen some attrition in the past in this series, and one where the Retro Series seen plenty of caution flags and trouble in the late stages of runs. This could be a very tricky race to try and adjust to those surroundings if you're Adam Blocker. It could be one of the most intense races as well of the entire first half of the campaign, potentially as well.
Blocker, by the way, has found a home with, I believe it's Indy Sim in Indianapolis, run by Gary Betthausen, of course, son of former Champ Car and IndyCar driver Gary Betthausen, who did win his first ever race at this track all the way, if I do recall correctly, in 1968. So a little bit of heritage there, but an interesting schedule, Justin, already. And now we start really getting into the swing of things. The first short track, like you said, very difficult, very tough. And now we head into what I think is going to be an important couple of months, April, May, June, as you head into the first of our Triple Crown races at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And this is where many drivers can, as you said, get into that rhythm, especially with tracks like Mid-Ohio and Watkins going for the road course side, as well as tracks like Gateway and Kentucky on the oval side. But to be able to have good rhythm and momentum, I feel you have to properly get yourself through this race tonight to be able to survive, be able to have your strategy dialed in, and be able to come away with a clean finish. Tonight's going to be very tricky to be able to do that, to say the very least. But if you get all of those mixture of things right tonight, you put yourself in a great spot for the next couple of weeks, to say the very least.
Great aerial shots brought to you by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com of the cars, getting underway for practice. We've still got 5 minutes before we work our way into solo car qualifying. Now let's take a look at our championship standings presented by Butt Kicker, and you will see it is Adam Blocker still at the top. Sage Karam is in 8th after victory on the streets of Long Beach, Justin. And how many rookies in the top 10? We've got 5 of them. And of course, Henry Bennett, Jason Brophy, they're now joined by the likes of Lionel Callisto, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and Matt Houston.
And all of them have been very quick in the early stage of the season. But it's going to be very difficult to try and stop Blocker with some of the momentum he's carried the first couple races. Focused on the points, if you remember him talking about that for Long Beach, and came away with solid points. Connor Harrington, you can put in that same grasp. The thing is, when it comes to Harrington, he's been quick in final practice throughout the night. So was Blocker in the closing stages for tonight. So both of those drivers at the top standings expected to be contenders to try and add on to their points totals to try and build a bit of a buffer to the rest of the top 10.
Especially to Sage Karam, of course, will miss out on some valuable championship points. It's been a good start to the season for the IndyCar driver. Someone else that you should keep your eye on includes the defending Lionheart Retro Series champion, Ryan Otis. He's in a tie for 6th position. Here are the team standings presented by HyperX. It is the private label Team Hype that still leads by just over 50 points, Justin, but we really do have to now wait and see what Adrenaline Motorsports can do. You'll only see 2 of their outfits in the top 10. Of course, Adrenaline Motorsports Black, a number of their drivers missed out on the race last time out. Those guys really need a solid points haul today to get themselves back in to those top 5 in these championships.
And I think some of the drivers are going to be up towards the front today, but look at who's in 3rd position. Sim Racing Merch Esports with a quiet, strong start to the season, in fact, in the first couple rounds in the point standings. Their drivers going to be looking to try and have some good speed tonight. They've been also consistent in final practice and preparation for tonight. And for some of those other organizations, it's going to be critical to try and turn things around starting now if you want to win a team championship.
One more championship to take a look at. It is the rookie standings presented by Butt Kicker. It is Bennett, Brophy, Kalisto 1, 2, and 3. But you will see all the way down to Mike Razmas. Some interesting names to keep an eye on, including former IndyCar driver Richie Hearn. Always weird calling him a rookie. Here are the series details presented by Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or a sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz, and don't forget to use the promo code Minus273LHRS15 for 15% off all orders. Justin, like I said, we are approaching the first of our Triple Crown races at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but at a track like this, that fixed setup is also vital to try and manage car balance over the course of a very long run, in-car tools, and the drivers being able to adjust on those in-car tools, that's going to be crucial to coming out on top.
Especially in the early portions of the run. We were talking about this prior to tonight's action, where drivers are expected to have a bit of twitchiness in the first 5 laps or so of the run on the colder tires. So expect a lot of adjustments for some of the drivers, especially with the aero wash in traffic as the night goes on. That's going to be very critical if you want to try and get proper speed. But at the same time, you also have to be able to keep in mind, you have to be able to try and get yourself those pockets of air. That's going to be very critical to, in turn, use those tools to try and break away from the rest of the pack.
Very much so, and it's a very tricky race to actually control. Take a look at the event details. The only season we didn't come to the desert was actually back in Season 1. Since Season 2, we've come here for every single race. The race has increased in distance. In Season 2, it was just 125 laps. We had a couple of races at 150 miles in length. Now, though, 200 laps, 200 miles, and that's the way it's been for the last 3 years as well. Pole position has only taken victory twice in 7 years, and Dan Gearan, the uncrowned king of Phoenix, 3 pole positions, second most laps led, no victories to speak of. And I think the crucial thing here, Justin, is not just to survive the race and get through all of the attrition. It's trust in, I'm going to steal a Metallica lines here, the Lords of Downforce.
An interesting line to say the very least, but I think it's interesting how drivers who start the pole struggle. But that's the reason why it's not so much the laps led. It's more so the strategy and the difficulty of keeping the lead at a short track, because that's one of the key things, is dialing in your strategy, getting on the right strategy, and remembering that qualifying speed and race speed are 2 different arts when it comes to this racetrack. Drivers have been turning 20 and 21 second lap times around here in preparation for tonight. If you can try and get yourself up in the front with valuable track position, but also be able to be good on the long run here tonight, then there's the chance that can change. If you struggle on that long run, you may drop back in the pack, especially if you even start up at the front.
Let's take a look at this track as the cars work their way into qualifying. 1 mile in length, if you ask NASCAR. IndyCar has a slightly different view, 1.022 miles in length. But Justin, of course, a very unique layout. You've got the dog leg that was, of course, used because the track had to be built to accommodate the features of the terrain around. But it does really mean that this track races like none other in the U.S.
It's a very unique short track, to say the very least, where it allows drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series today, for example, to cut their way through that dog leg. It's a shortcut, but also having to remember to keep their equipment in check because of the change in elevation, the change in the slight banking that can damage those race cars. Keep in mind, a lot of history when it comes to sports cars in USAC was also here since its opening in the 1960s, and of course, soon replaced the old track that was at the Arizona State Fairgrounds. A lot of history in open wheel racing has taken place here. And don't forget, this just so happens to be the place that in the 1980s was the home of the first Polish victory lap in stock car racing.
Stealing all of my track facts, Justin. We'll say hello to you for one of the first times this season. I've got a nice green screen behind me, but Justin, some predictions from you. I want to get a prediction for qualifying and for the race as well. I think this is one track where you're really going to have to be on your toes to pick the right ones as well.
I think Matt Taylor is somebody to keep an eye on. A lot of momentum from last week, but also has been very quick. Top of the board in both final warm-ups and the final open practice in preparation for tonight by a couple 100ths of a second. In fact, in those warm-ups, up to a 10th of a second. He's going to be lightning quick. Keep an eye on Matt Taylor.
So Matt Taylor, Justin's pick. I'm going to say someone predictable. Adam Blocker, currently provisional pole position as we see Taylor in the 8 car working his way up to racing speed for these qualifying runs. Very important to try and maximize qualifying with cautions expected, other things expected as well in terms of chaos. Blocker with a 21.35. We are almost a full second slower than our qualifying lap record, a 3.29 set by Dan Gearan all the way back in Season 6. And new tire model has, of course, slowed these cars down. Matt Taylor provisionally 24th, Justin, as he crosses the line this time around, does improve a 23.42. That puts him up into 8th position.
Couldn't back up the speed that he showed earlier on, but I think he's somebody that if he can get a clean restart, might be someone to keep an eye on for some of the passes today. But keep an eye on a couple other drivers who are looking to set some times at the moment and try and get some good track position. Jason Galvin, I know, is going to be someone that's going to be very pumped up about this race. He's someone yet to hit the racetrack. Keep an eye as well, I think, on Juan Callisto. I know he put in a significant amount of time in final practices in preparation to make sure he gets up to speed.
And I tell you what, we are racing today for the Thumbs Up Cancer Down Phoenix 200. Jason Galvin, part of the Thumbs Up Cancer Down LPM crew, also a board member at the Thumbs Up Cancer Down team. Just a reminder, you can head on over to thumbsupcancerdown.com/donate and fund a power-up pack for those fighting cancer. We put our thumbs up to knock cancer down. It's a great statement. And Jason Galvin as well, Justin. We saw in that season opener one of the hardest chargers we've got in our field.
And I've seen him succeed here at Phoenix before in the past. He's someone that, if you give him track position, could be also a solid threat for race victories here at this racetrack. It's his home track, in fact. He's had experience here in the real world announcing as well with this facility. It's just a matter of getting that track position here in qualifying. Only a 20.3 15th best. He's going to have to put in a lot of work to be able to get up towards the front. Same can be said for a couple other drivers like Connor Harrington, who's right now lined up alongside him in the starting grid, and Joshua Chin, surprisingly 17th in qualifying.
Then you've got the likes of Tony Showen in 25th, Joe Branch in 27th. Samuel Ryman now working his way up for qualifying, Justin. 60 seconds left on the clock. Mike Rasmuss in second, Christopher in third, Andrew Kinsella in fourth. This was the bounce back we were expecting from the Adrenaline team. They are 1, 2, and 3. Brian Carey down in eighth as well.
Oh, and Samuel Ryman didn't like what he's seen from that final run out of the corner. Actually aborts his qualifying run. Surprising there. So he's going to be the last of the drivers who are going to be able to at least attempt to run, it looks like, for our qualifying.
So we got 30 seconds left. I did say Adam Blocker would have some success. I do think, though, pole position might be more important than usual here, Justin. I was hearing from some of these drivers in the practice races that the leader is able to pull out about a 2.5 second advantage over the course of just about 40 laps, which is one of our fuel stint, and pit stops about 50 laps. That's when they're expected. And
that's the benefit of clean air. You have to remember the Retro Series when they came here to Arjuna. It was a similar pattern early on. There was a 1.7 second lead in the first 20-25 laps or so of that event, Arjuna. So we may see a similar trend tonight for these Star IRA teams.
Let's go trackside in the desert then and take a look at our starting grid here from Phoenix. So here is our butt kicker starting grid. It's Adam Blocker, the defending champion, looking for his fourth consecutive title, a 21.35 pole position by just over 1/10 of a second. Huge gap here on the oval. Mike Rasmuss rounds out the front row. Christopher and Andrew Kinsella complete an all Adrenaline Motorsports row number 2. Aaron Morgan in 5th. Jay Brandt on his outside to complete row number 3. We've got a nice healthy grid of cars once more. Jason Brophy in 7th alongside the Canadian Brian Carey, who had some success on Monday night. The streets of Long Beach here on Race Spot TV. Matt Taylor, Stefan Larkamp, teammates completing the edge of the top 10. Then Mike Rigney in the 00 alongside your Lionheart Retro Series champion, Ryan Otis in 12th. Chris Fowler in 13th. Henry Bennett back in 14th. Lots of work for him to do. Jason Galvin driving that thumbs-up cancer down car. He'll be back in 15th alongside Connor Harrington. 2 hard chargers to watch out for today. Joshua Chin back in 17th position. Justin Weaver completes row number 9. Edge of the top 20 at Tyler Groff in the graphics LPM number 26 alongside a rookie Luis Gonzalez Nunez for the Neki Racing team. Just under 3/10 separates the top 21. That's where you find Big Joe Hassett in another one of the thumbs up cancer down cars. Brian Beard completes row 11. James Grahula, Christopher Reagan, they are row 12 behind them. Tony Shaw and Matt Houston, Joe Branch back in 27th, along with Ken Hacker, Adam Fraser, Brian Greenlee. They round out the top 30. Still got some cars to work our way through. James Paulson, Ricky Harden, Lionel Kalisto, Samuel Ryman, Scott Holmes, and Richie Hearn. The 36th and final car did not set a qualifying time. Let's get then underway. Before we get to some of our predictions, let's try and jump on board for some of the onboard cameras we'll take a look at today. It's Jason Galvin who's got the thumbs up cancer down on board. We put our thumbs up to not cancer down. Fund a power pack by visiting thumbsupcancerdown.com/donate.
Henry Bennett will have the HyperX onboard camera today. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game.
Got a few more cameras to work our way through, but we'll get you to them over the course of the race. Not long before the safety car down onto the safety of pit road. 200 miles here in the desert. The thumbs up cancer down Phoenix 200 presented by Minus 273. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and it's the Lionheart himself out front looking for a 4th consecutive championship and a 2nd consecutive win here in the desert. Let's get underway for 200 miles of racing. And the thumbs up cancer down Phoenix 200 presented by Minus 273. It's side by side behind Adam Blocker. As you see, there's Christopher already up into 2nd as Mike Rasmus is being swarmed by the teammates. Further back though, Justin, here goes the insanity as cars try to fight for some clean air.
And it's going to be one of the most tricky parts of this entire race, is trying to find the clean air, try the different lines while making sure you don't get into anybody. That's going to be very critical as this race goes on, and those in-car tool adjustments are going to be something having to be played with as this night goes on. Absolutely. Jason Brophy already struggling a little bit, nearly hit the wall at a turn 2. He did tap the wall a couple times, trying to arc his way into the corners at that end of the speedway in practice.
Oh, look at that craziness there. 2 wide, 2 deep in towards turn 1. Jason Brophy must have his mirrors filled as the 2 teammates side by side, Taylor and Larkamp. You've got Otis, who's scrapping it out with a 3rd of the NHR Esports team cars. That's Chris Fowler, who's stuck on the outside there. And wow, look at this, Justin. Henry Bennett is trying to fend off a charge from behind. Lots of cars having to fend off aggressive charges as Galvin now looks down to the inside as well.
And I've seen this with the Retro Series as well, where drivers had to be very patient, but also precise in their movements to be able to make passes. If they were over-aggressive and spent several laps trying to dive underneath, it was going to be very tricky with the aero wash on those cars. Same going to be the trend, I think, for tonight, where if you make a wrong move or try and over-push towards, say, the bottom of the racetrack, you won't be able to get the job done, and in turn, you'll have drivers right on behind you ready to pounce. So in other words, you're going to need to be near picture perfect on your moves. As Galvin underneath the yellow line, perfect example right there. Chin able to take advantage of him trying to take the low line.
Weaver goes around the outside as well. Doesn't look like that apron is a very comfortable place for cars to be at this point in time. I do wonder if that will start to open up as the race continues. Single file they go now back all the way from 1st to about 15th position at the front. We talked about how important clean air is going to be. There you see Christopher up into 2nd on that start, past Mike Rasmus. Kinsella has fallen into line, but Adam Blocker, a 1.1 second advantage here, Justin. We talked about pre-race. We're not sure if Adam is in the simulation motion rig that the guys at Indy Sim has, but whatever it is, he has gotten very comfortable very, very quickly here.
Yeah, over there they use, for their motion rig, Sim Experience Stage 5 racing sims, as well as a G-Force seat, which would take a lot of adjustment, to put it that way, for tonight. But it seems like Blocker is in his rhythm and then some, already up in that 1.2, 1.3 second gap that we were expecting early on with that clean air. But in these air pockets of traffic, several drivers are just trying to gain some positions after struggling in qualifying. Chin amongst them, was among the surprises, in my opinion, about where he and his teammates qualified tonight.
You see Harrington unable to get on past Chris Fowler. Chin looks for the clean air, but there's not much to find at this point, Justin. Looks like the cars are much more content down on that low line. We are now 10 laps into the run, so about 20% of the way down in terms of fuel. This is when we expected the cars to maybe start to work their way into the optimum range for the cars to work side by side, but you can see here Chin and Harrington are unable to do anything. 13 cars back in line right now.
Yeah, that's, again, just that arrow push, sliding these cars up the racetrack, and that's why you see them trying to play it around a little bit at the lines. But the reason they are utilizing that bottom line is because that's the preferred line around the racetrack here at Phoenix for the most part, because it's the shortest distance around. But these drivers are also having to duck down in heavy amounts of speed, down to 157 at the apex of turns 3 and 4, for example, up to 187 at the end of the straightaway. It's a ton of speed carried in.
But right now, single file for the most part. And, you know, they run the road course configuration wings here, Justin. We talked about trusting the Lords of Downforce. It's very much believing in something that doesn't exist. And for someone like Scott McLaughlin, a brand new driver in the NTT IndyCar series, he's talked about that being one of the things that he's got to learn and trust in and get over that psychological fear, because you can't see downforce. It's something that you just have to believe is going to be there when you go fast.
Yeah, and the downforce, for those who don't know, essentially means the more downforce you have, the more speed you can carry through the corners and stick in said corners. The less downforce you have, the more quicker you are down the straightaways, but you're slower in the corners. So that's essentially where you're trusting that you have enough downforce for your car to just stick in the middle of the corner apex and be able to properly launch its way around without snapping around or spinning out or getting too tight in the traffic. So you have to be able to trust that and have that experience and preparation to have that trust in yourself and the car, and we've seen that already with several of the cars. Some of the errors are starting to make those fights you were talking about, some of them wanting to move up some positioning.
Yeah, there's Tony Schowen, one of the Adrenaline Motorsports black drivers that does need some good points, tries to go side by side with Ken Hacker, just about able to get the move done, but Tony Schowen not actually moved up from his starting position, so it's not been the easiest of runs for him so far. Let's go left-hand side of the screen and show you the movers and shakers. We'll cycle through them. Not so many movers in the top 10, Justin, but someone like Mike Rigney, he's down 9 positions in 20th right now. Between 10th and 20th, you do see quite a bit of shuffling right now.
Yeah, especially with the drivers losing positions in particular and struggling in the early going, and that's what we talked about. If you struggle early on in this race, it's hard to recover it back with this type of racetrack. Follow on board the 95 machine. You can see as well, there's that arrow push we were talking about. Try to go a little bit higher as soon as he slipped up the car in front. That's Matt Taylor. Car washed up the racetrack, having to lift off the gas a little bit more to make sure you don't slide up in that blue safer barrier. And one thing to remember, Arjuna, around lap 20, in the next couple laps or so, this was where the trend was in the Retro Series with the Lotus 79s of drivers sliding up. Don't
do it, Justin. Don't put the commentator's curse. I have a rather bad track record for that kind of thing. I will say that last time that the series came here, series low caution count of just 6, and it was Adam Blocker who won, 2.7 seconds clear of his teammate Chris Stouffer right now. You can see by that animation there, it looks like Chris Fowler and Justin Weaver are having a bit of a side-by-side scrap through turn 1, or almost contact through the dogleg. I think that here Joe Hassett will try and take advantage, and Hassett, who does have one of the other onboard cameras in today's race, that's the Midwest Simulations onboard, makers of Spotlight's visual spotter system. You watch the track, we'll watch the rest, and I have a feeling at a track like this you will need that Spotlight system. Tells you when you're side by side, when you're clear as well, Justin. You can see in front of Hassett, Fowler and Weaver, they're still going side by side for about 2 laps right now.
It's holding up a little bit, though. They've lost 4/10 a lap as a result of the side-by-side, so eventually something's got to give. There it is right there. Meanwhile, you can tell the teammates as well as fighting side-by-side. Jason Galvin, we talked about him potentially being someone to keep it on. Just a struggled in the short run, especially to make passes. Just can't get that bottom line to work. Keeps on going too low against that yellow line now. Same thing with against Big Joe Hasser. Just hit that yellow line underneath that onto the apron. And nearly around he goes, and now to the back behind Hassert he went.
Well, it's something where I think a lot of people who maybe have not tried racing a high-speed open-wheel car like this around the Phoenix International Raceway don't necessarily understand, Justin, is it's much easier to turn in early than it is to turn in late. Because if you turn in late, as we see contact, that's Fowler into the wall. Think that was contact with Joe Hassert. Caution should be imminent, and there it is. Finally comes out 24 laps without any issue, and it looks like Joe Hassert and Chris Fowler get involved, Justin, for the first caution, and wow, there is subsequent contact as Adam Blocker almost got mixed up in that as well.
Absolute calamity, and apologies for the commentator's curse, but that's, I think, partly what you were talking about, where it was easier to turn in than it is to be able to turn out, essentially. That time, Joe Hassert slid in and was a little bit tight, in fact. Missed a little bit of the bottom of the racetrack, right to the left rear suspension and tire of Fowler. Nothing Fowler can do as that car went straight. But the reason everyone else piled in behind is in the checkup effect, several cars ended up colliding and causing an even massiver crash after all of that.
So the other cars involved, there's Scott Holmes, Richie Hearn, Ricky Harding as well. There's the contact with Fowler. Now let's keep it under the super slow-mo. There's Holmes, is barreling his way down into Turn 1. You see Hearn in front. Hearn makes contact with Harding, and oh no, they're going to hit that stricken car Fowler. Oh, Scott Holmes has nowhere to go. What does Adam Blocker see in all of this as well, Justin, excuse me? Take a look at this onboard. It's debris going everywhere, and he has to dive down to the inside to find a route through.
Yeah, that's terrifying as a driver when you come through the corner, see the caution flag, but don't expect to see the track essentially near blocked. Even with the wide donk leg here at Phoenix. It's just a tough situation with the pace that Blocker had been pulling away by more than 2 seconds, but man, just nowhere to go for several of the drivers in that situation after the secondary incident there. A lot of drivers lucky to not get damaged as just about everybody in the field elected to pit.
This is interesting. Matt Taylor, Jason Galvin, James Krahula, and Brian Beard are the only 4 cars that have stayed out there on the track. And as we come out of pit road, there's going to be a change for the race lead. Chris Stouffer in that net P1 battle will cycle through. Adam Blocker will be net second. Then it's Mike Razmas. I think Aaron Morgan has jumped Andrew Kinsella as well. So the race off pit road, Justin, has shaken up this field.
And a 1 second quicker stop for Chris Stouffer helped him get the net race off the pit lane. But this is going to be the interesting part now with Blocker overall falling into the dirty areas. Can he overcome the dirty air? And also, can he overcome the dirty air of Matt Taylor, Jason Galvin, James Krahula, and Brian Beard, who are all gambling on being able to have a different strategy for things to work out? It was interesting how things played out for the Retro Series in that aspect. But the interesting mark is, especially with the 6 cautions in the last race for the IndyCar Series side, is will that end up being the trend of the night? Or will we see it be one where these drivers will have to gamble later on in this race or be put in a box rather with the strategy?
I think my assumption here, to be honest, Justin, is that as we get later and later into this race, the moves will get more and more aggressive. And especially in those last, 20, 30 laps, that's when we'll see similar incidents to what we just saw there. And again, I'm glad I'm not in race control for some of these because there's going to be some tough decisions that have to be made, especially in some, incidents like that where it's close contact at very, very high speeds. And sometimes it comes down to a racing incident where 2 drivers, they're put in a position where they can't get out of it fast enough to avoid the contact.
And that's going to be the tricky part, especially on these restarts here, too, where they practice several times and drivers struggled with checkups here as we get the one-to-go signal. It's going to be important for drivers to keep in mind what's going on in front of them and be able to react in time. It's going to be tough. That's the tough part because you only have maybe a couple seconds at the very most in most circumstances to pick a line and hope that the door stays open for you to get through cleanly. It's going to be an intriguing race now with these 4 up front. I'm curious how they hold up in terms of the tire wear as well.
We're about halfway through the run, so drivers will be expected down to pit road on give or take lap 58 or so now. So it'll be Matt Taylor, Jason Galvin, James Grahula, and Brian Beard at the front of our field for the Thumbs Up Cancer Phoenix 200. As we get back underway after our first caution of the day. Safety car back down onto the safety of pit road, and a thunderous start out front as Matt Taylor tries to get the jump down into turn number 1. Single file throughout the entirety of the field, but it is Chris Stouffer, the first of the cars that came down pit road, that got the best launch out of everyone else trying to make a pass here, Justin, and we'll see how important new tires are as he goes down to the inside and he's trying to battle then for 4th position.
Just couldn't get the run right underneath Brian Beard, and Beard, always known as somebody, especially in some of the retro style cars, as being a quick driver across the iRacing service in open wheel action. But the main thing's going to be getting these passes done quickly here. You can see him trying to change up the lines, trying to get the top line to work to get a run off the corner. It seems like, again, that track position is very critical, at least in the first few laps as the tires heat up, as Blocker to the inside.
I don't know if the teammate's going to appreciate that. Just about squeezed is Chris Stouffer, but Adam Blocker back to the net lead in terms of cars who have cycled down onto pit road. Feeds a lot of dirty air to the Indiana native. Chris Stouffer checks up the momentum of his teammate as well. No, I'm sure some words might be exchanged after the race, because Andrew Kinsella as well is getting checked up in all of this palaver. The front two have scampered away very slightly. Matt Taylor, Jason Galvin, about 1.5 tenths separates them, and then you got James Grahula 7 tenths further back, Justin. The first time we've really seen someone able to follow the leader here.
Yeah, Galvin's been doing a good job closing on in slowly but surely. Closed in about 2 tenths the last time by, but the problem has been, remember, for Galvin, actually making the pass. It's been seen with the aero watch. It can be very tricky, especially when the driver in front has the clean air. And it's been also very paramount in battles like this one, where you have Joshua Chin, Henry Bennett, Connor Harrington, all stuck in traffic.
Is Chin going to try and get the over-under here? As you saw, there was a car that was rolling itself out of pit road. I believe that was Scott Holmes, so out of the cars that did take damage in the first incident, only Chris Fowler and Ricky Harding find themselves retired from the race. Richie Hearn and Scott Holmes cycle back out onto track, but 6 and 9 laps down respectively. We cross the line to complete lap 35 out of 200, 35 miles done in the desert, and once more we are single file as drivers try and fight for clean air, fight for track position, and we wait and see here, Justin, if clean tires really are going to help Adam Blocker. You saw Chin try to get all the way down to the apron. And meanwhile, out front, Adam Blocker not able to really close in on the top 4 contenders just yet.
You have to remember here, too, with the traffic, he knows that these drivers in front of him are going to have to come down in about 20 laps or so, give or take, to be able to make it on fuel for their next stint. So this is an opportunity in turn to back up a little bit, save some fuel, while you have a distance from the rest of the drivers. So at this point, there's not too much need for Blocker to show too much urgency to pass by the drivers who are on the alternate strategy. As long as you keep on saving, I think he's in a decent spot.
Keep looking at this battle between Chin and Bennett, two very, very strong contenders in an IndyCar over the years. Chin, of course, an iRacing Indy 500 winner back in 2018 in that broadcast race where it was a very interesting scrap with Andrew Kinsella. As you saw Chin diving to the inside, look at Blocker all over the rear end now of Brian Beard, who seems to be having his own technical issues at this point in time and is helping the likes of Grahula, Galvin, and Taylor to extend the gap. And you can see, Justin, actually if I'm those 4 cars who didn't come down onto pit road, this might actually be an interesting strategy, because if we get a late race caution and we go relatively green as Blocker around the outside up into the top 4, it might actually benefit those cars in terms of filling less fuel to get them to the end.
Yeah, that was my thought process here too, is they're thinking big picture with this call here, where they have that opportunity later on in the race is going to be one of the big things. But it's also a gamble where you're expecting a driver to have some trouble. That isn't you. So it's kind of a gamble where you have that opportunity to get some track position now. If you get a caution flag, you have an opportunity. If you don't get the caution flag, then you can potentially have it work later on. Speaking of getting things to work, Galvin on the bottom finally makes it work.
All the way down on the apron, got scared for a moment. Still on the outside, though. The NHR car of Matt Taylor can't roll the momentum through turn 1. And the thumbs up cancel down LPM machine rolls its way into the race lead as we approach the 25% marker in this race. And the first pit stop as well for the top 4 contenders. Brian Beard has still been having those minor issues in terms of his internet. Race control does have the ability to warn drivers for some of these issues, Justin, and you can see Christopher, Mike Rasmussen, they're very close behind. Indiana's Christopher might be wondering if that message gets passed on down anytime soon.
Yeah, that could be very nerve-wracking to see a driver with technical issues in front of you, especially in these types of cars, because if you end up trying to make a move and say they have a issue at any point when you're side by side, it can affect how you approach. There is a bit of a checkup effect there.
No, I don't even think that was a checkup, Justin. Excuse me. I thought for a second Andrew Kinsella sent so much speed in towards turn 1. He almost hit the rear end of Mike Rasmussen. He tries to do the same in towards turn 3, but unable to get underneath the rear wing. He stays in line, but this, I think, gives you the indication of how hard it is to make moves. And when we see them, Justin, it will give us the proper appreciation for just how much these cars are having to set things up right now.
Yeah, it takes a lot of skill, obviously, to be able to make moves with how things have been faring with the traffic and the aero wash for these cars tonight. So this is where that talent level really comes into play for these competitors, and where that qualifying may end up being one of the most important qualifying sessions we've seen so far this season as a result of how things have played out.
Krahula looks below the yellow line as well now. Excuse me, sorry, Justin. I've seen over the course of the race a number of cars have elected to do that so far. I'm not so sure if I would do that. We have seen back in the Dallara DW12 days that if you go on YouTube, you can find some very amusing clips of Empty Box slinging it down all the way to the inside of the wall through turns 3 and 4. But you can see Adam Blocker is getting much more success right now, running about 2 or 3 lanes up in terms of where that yellow line is.
I mean, with the modern-day Phoenix on some of the restarts with stock car racing, drivers would try that all the way to the inside wall and fan out 6 wide. But here, it's always been very tricky. It's a very slippery apron here at Phoenix Raceway, here on the iRacing service. So it's one where you not necessarily want to run down on that line, but if you can make it work, it can be beneficial. The problem has been all night, though, and we've talked about this with Jason Galvin, for example, when he tried it a couple times. You arc it too low and put those tires underneath that yellow line. Each time, they've had to lift off aggressively, and guess what? One more driver has been able to attack on the outside line. So that's something that I think drivers have to weigh out and know based on experience here, especially knowing, for example, right here, Krahula tries the move. That opens up the door for Blocker now.
Blocker unable to really get it done. More momentum into 1. He takes a look. He tries to force it, but I think Krahula on the outside in the Sim Racing Merch Esports machine is able to hold on. And now we'll see just how important tires are. By the way, Jason Galvin looks to become the 7th driver in terms of IndyCar Series wins. This would be his 8th. He's tied with Big Joe Hassert in terms of the number of wins he's got. Clear of the field now by 2.3 seconds. Matt Taylor is really checked up now, and you can see it's not just bringing in Adam Blocker into this fight, but Brian Beard, Christopher, Mike Rasmussen. They're all being brought into the mix as I think Scott Holmes back down onto pit road, so that car clearly not fully repaired. Going back to the repairs, though, just for a second before I hand it over to you, Justin, Richie Hearn, he has gotten those repairs done 6 laps down. I love seeing that kind of stuff. But at the front, let's focus up here for a second because you can see the train of cars that forms between 2nd and 10th continues to compress on down.
Yeah, right now the checkup effects are about a couple tenths a lap. Galvin is running 21 1s in clean air. In the dirty air, it's 21 3s trying to find in this mix. Again, proves just that difficulty we've talked about all night long. Once you lose that lead, it can be tricky to be able to get yourself back up in position. But here's the thing. In a couple laps or so, we talked about this under the caution flag, Arjuna, around this range, Adam Blocker is going to be set free, and he's going to be in clean air with that net race lead. And that gap is going to be by about at least a second or so, and it's going to be interesting how Blocker saved his stuff here in the midst of this traffic.
There you can see left-hand side how long the cars have been out there on the track. Ticking lap 57 for Galvin, Taylor, Krahula, and who is that? Brian Beard, excuse me, in the 5 car back in 5th now, but should be a matter of laps, maybe this time around for the likes of Galvin, who's working his way out of turn 4, not down this time around. Blocker rolls the momentum. Can he get it done around the outside of James Krahula? Yes, he can, and up into the top 3. Now we start to see tires becoming more of a factor here, Justin.
It's looking like, based on what I've seen so far, and I've seen this before in the past to Arjuna, especially in the stock cars of this track, as they come in a pit in front of him. Adam Blocker has just watched Matt Taylor duck into the pit lane.
And he's not followed down by any of the other cars, so Beard, Krahula, and Galvin stay out there for one more lap. And oh, caution's going to fly. There's an incident coming out of turn number 4. I believe it's Big Joe Hassard, who's already reset back down onto pit road. Caution flies, Justin, for the second time today, and this time it's caught Matt Taylor out in a big way.
And what a time for the caution flag for Jason Galvin, because this is now going to be intriguing how this plays out. But we'll see what happened with the reason of the caution flag. It was in 3 and 4 we've seen the trouble just as that window started to open up for the drivers who stayed out.
You can see you can see Henry Bennett in front. And oh, it's contact between Hassard, and there's a big contact up into the wall. Need to take one more look at that, Justin, to really get an indication there. But another hard contact here at high speeds, at the Phoenix International Raceway.
I think he just sent it too hard on the gas, not expecting that little checkup from Bennett right there, since he was already on the back gearbox of the car in front. And in turn, right over the right rear tire and hard with the side pod into the wall. And that is race over, it looks like, for the 11 machine as a result. A big caution.
Question now becomes, how significant is the damage to Henry Bennett? By the way, almost everyone down on pit road as we take one more look at this replay. Let's jump back to the live coverage and take a look at what is a very busy pit lane, Justin. You can see Adam Blocker makes his way down into the box. Only a couple of cars have stayed out here. Ryan Otis, Matt Houston, and this is a surprising call. They are 34 laps into their stint.
Wonder if they're gambling on an air caution flag potentially in a few laps or so to try and offset things in terms of strategy. It's going to be interesting, but the race off the lane, Blocker was able to get the advantage.
It was close, but I think, this caution has really enabled Blocker with a slightly shorter fill time to jump Jason Galvin. And oh, he's back into the net race lead, and this will be crucial now how this restart goes, Justin. Because if he can get on past Matt Houston and Ryan Otis, an opportunity for Blocker to maybe try and set up another race victory here in the Lionheart IndyCar Series.
It's an absolutely huge opportunity, but I have to say, an absolutely gutsy call from Jason Galvin and a couple drivers that worked out just about perfectly for him. Matt Taylor as well, you could put in that grouping, but Taylor, I believe, may have had some problems in the pit lane, so I had to sacrifice all the positions, as only one driver in total is going to end up staying out here as Houston has come in. Matt, it's going to be Ryan Otis who's going to be your race leader.
It will be Otis, and I believe there might even be a car trapped in between. Is that the 70 of Richie Hearn? Yes. So
yes.
Lionheart Retro Series champion will have some lap traffic in between him and the rest of the contenders here. That might be exactly what he's looking for. But I don't believe here, Justin, that Richie Hearn will get cycled around anywhere. He will start in that second position in train. He'll have an angry Adam Blocker trying to get back into the race lead right behind him.
And pardon me on Taylor, he's the car in front taking the wave as there goes Richie Hearn to go down the pit lane and stay out of the way of the battle for the race lead here. But I think this is going to be interesting how it plays out in particular for Galvin. Because remember, he was as deep as 17th during the first green flag run of the race. That clean air, he was running away by up to 0.3 a lap. That's how big the clean air is compared to being stuck in the traffic. So this is going to be intriguing how it plays out for him, how it plays out for the Retro Series driver who talked about learning these cars and getting experience entering this season. How about trying to gain experience by being your race leader?
And he's got Adam Blocker, Jason Galvin behind him. Two cars looking to duel it out for the lead of this race. And Galvin has rocketed his way up from the front. Krahula as well, up an incredible 19 positions. So Strategy has worked in his favor. Will it do the same for the Lionheart Retro Series champion Ryan Otis, who will bring us back to the green flag as a safety car back down onto the safety of pit road one more time this race. Green flag flies for the third time today as we get back underway, and the thumbs up cancel down Phoenix 200. And not really anyone getting a noticeably impressive start as we thunder through turns 1 and 2. You can see, though, it looks like Christopher, a bit of a better jump as compared to Brian Beard behind, has opened the door for Andrew Kinsella to try and pounce on Mike Rasmussen as they come through turn 3. Up front, Jason Galvin side by side with Adam Blocker. Oh, Blocker just about holds on there, but already Jason Galvin, Justin, looking very, very feisty.
Yeah, he's seen an opportunity on the inside, but got a bit tight, it looked like, coming off the corner there. It almost seems like, again, you want to be on that top line. We've seen Blocker try and use it for both passes and defensive moves right now. So at that moment, Galvin has to, I think, try and switch that up, try and build up enough of a run to get to the outside, to the right side of Blocker if he really wants to complete this move. Seen the same thing from behind, for example, for Christopher trying to get to the outside of Garua.
Can see as well, Kinsella now looks to the inside of Rasmus once more, sends it in through turn 3, upwards of 270 kilometers entering the corner, scrubs down to almost 220 through the apex of turn 3, opens the door for Aaron Morgan behind. Morgan checks up momentum, forces Jay Brandt to check up momentum as well. Brian Carey and Jason Brophy, they're squabbling it out over 11th position. Incredible stuff once more on these restarts. You can see Tyler Groff and Stefan Larkamp squabbling over 16th and 17th respectively. Interestingly though, dirty air seems to be a bit more of a problem for Adam Blocker than worn tires are for Ryan Otis right now, Justin.
It's nearly identical to what we've seen with the last cycle of strategy, where that clean air just allows drivers to be able to carry more speed, plant the throttle down a bit better. Overall, feels more comfortable when you're in clean air compared to the aero wash, which can push you tight. And we're seeing exactly that. Right now, Galvin, for example, essentially has the double toe off Otis and Blocker. That's causing him to be much more tighter, and why I think in part he's been so consistent against the yellow line compared to Blocker, who's been trying to stay consistent up against that wall.
Well, it's all about, I think, tire conservation at this point, because a double toe, it does also mean that you work twice as hard to really get the car turned in. So tires do start to wear, and this is where I think Galvin as well uses the inside line to just try and minimize the amount of dirty air that he has to contend with. Of course, the effect of the air from Ryan Otis will be significantly less just due to the distance between the cars. Ooh, teammates side by side, always love to see this. It's Joshua Chin around the outside. Connor Harrington, second place in the championship, Justin, but back in 14th position right now. He needs to find his way up through the field, and fast, because we are approaching the halfway point very, very quickly.
You have to wonder at this point if the private label team Hype Machines may have to roll the strategy dice later on, coordinate things, because it's been pretty clear. They're all lined up 12th, 13th, 14th, that if you don't try and gamble on the strategy, it's very difficult to try and get yourself through this field. So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they're discussing things later on and saying, okay, what if this happens? Can we make this work to be able to get some track position? Because that's all going to be so vital if you want to gain those points. At this point, I think, though, Chin has been a little bit quicker than Harrington, in part with the move up towards the front, though. Things are getting dicey for the lead.
It's side by side, Blocker down to the inside. He makes it work on the fresh tires. Galvin follows him through as well. Ryan Otis will try and fight this one back through the dogleg, but too little, too late, you would have to assume. Blocker feeds dirty air to both of his rivals. Galvin down to the apron once more. He's up into second position, Justin, as we cross the start-finish line. Otis will try and fight this one back, but it is Galvin in the 42 that will get up into second position.
And I almost wonder if Ryan Otis got a little bit too loose on the older tires there on that high line, trying to make that work, because that car's been drifting with the back end for the past couple laps or so. And that's where that experience, I think, may start to settle in a little bit. Just may have opened up enough of a run and turn for Blocker to be able to dive to the inside, and now that dirty air is going to see that 95 potentially start to drop back a touch.
Ooh, look at this. Aaron Morgan will be very happy to see Andrew Kinsella trying to find a way down to the inside. Oh, behind him as well. Jay Branch will make it too wide, too deep. Incredible stuff in the desert here. Working lap 77 out of 200, so we've still got half race distance to go, Justin. And like I said, the intensity is starting to pick up, not just at the front, but in the mid-pack as well.
And I think this is just some of the patience starting to grind down, knowing that you still have a couple more stops for a majority of the field here to be able to make it on the strategy. But it's also to where you want to get yourself some positioning before you get to that mark. It can be frustrating to stay in a line in one position in a train. And I think that's where it's starting to all come into play. Now an aggressive move too here.
Kinsella looks for it, but trying to get the slide job, checks his momentum up, and Justin once more opens the door for the likes of Aaron Morgan from behind. These cars now 9/10 of a second behind Brian Beard in 6th.
I think Kinsella's getting a little bit impatient here with Rasmus as he's been struggling that 68 to close up to the cars in front, especially Brian Beard right now. So I think right now Kinsella's going to have to try and play this well. Just get a ramp and a launch off the corner to be able to set up the move. He tried it a couple times already. If he's able to get enough of a run, he can make it work. Also going to have to use those in-car tool adjustments at this point to try and do anything at this point. To try something different. Kinsella's trying to use that high line to be different here for this line compared to Rasmus, who's using that middle bottom.
He's just trying to find some clean air to put on the nose as well. And Kinsella, who is one of the setup makers for the Lionheart Racing Series, has to build a setup that suits everyone. Looks down to the inside once more in through turn 3, but you'd have to think Rasmus can fight this one back on the outside. And indeed, as we roll momentum off of 4, Kinsella, the Canadian, back into line. And when you build a fixed setup for a league like this, Justin, it's not about building a setup that works for yourself. It's about building a setup that's going to race well. It's going to work for multiple different driving styles, and Kinsella has to manage all of that while still trying to be the fastest driver that he can be as well.
It can be very tricky, to say the very least, because you have to keep in mind it takes thousands upon thousands of laps to properly build a setup for a specific car and a specific track. The best of the best setup builders spend hours upon hours preparing the cars for whether it's league races, for Lionheart, for anything on the iRacing service. And you have to give them credit for the hard work that they put in to be able to build these cars, especially for Kinsella to be able to build them, to be able to manage the different driving styles drivers may have. But you have to also keep in mind as a driver, the driver's task in turn is figuring out what's the best way to drive it, because there's a phrase when it comes to having to race on the same setup as your fellow competitors. It's essentially you have to drive to how the car wants to race and adjust that driving style to tailor suit that track. So this is where all that prep work comes into play for the driver's side too, not just the builder side.
Very much so as well, and I know there are some of these drivers that do thousands and thousands of laps in preparations for these type of events. Working lap 86 out of 200. Ryan Otis works lap 59 on his stint, so he should owe us a pit stop very, very shortly. 1.3 seconds now behind from Jason Galvin, the same distance to your race leader between Galvin and Blocker, so you can now follow along with the intervals on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see gaps just between some of these cars down to tenths of a second, and a track that of course has open wheel heritage going back to its founding, because the original course was intended to host open wheel racing, incorporated a road course and a drag strip. The road course was 2 miles in length, while the oval was slightly shorter than that, but USAC had been racing all the way back since 1964. CART started to race here back in 1979, and obviously joined the Indy Racing League in 1996 as Ryan Otis down onto pit road, so we'll see where he will cycle out in relation to the rest of his competitors. After that, the race was held through 1996 through 2005, and IndyCar did come back to compete here between 2016 and 2018, Justin, when a new race lap record was set at 18.870.1. That is 194.975 miles an hour, and that is 2 seconds faster almost than what Adam Blocker did the last time around.
Which is incredible speeds, to say the very least. And correct me if I'm wrong, the throwback race had also taken place here for IndyCar as well at Phoenix in recent seasons. So it's a historic venue, to say the very least, where a lot of big moments have happened, and now of course, for stock car racing, hosts the championship weekends for NASCAR, for example. So it's a market that is growing and a track that is growing more and more in popularity each year. And I think this track...
Oh, sorry, Justin. Did Justin Weaver just get up into the wall there? I think for a second, Weaver was rim riding, as they call it on the iRacing.com service. Throw up the RaceSpot TV replay, excuse me, Justin. Let's take one more look at this. Entering in towards turn 3 is where I saw the contact. So let's jump on board with the 66 car here and talk us through what you see for a second.
This is a very scary situation. He's lucky he didn't get any chassis damage. You see right there that the right side buckles in as he ends up scraping the outside wall, trying to carry speed to get to the outside, maybe get some clean air with the private label Team Hype machines there. How he didn't damage that car significantly, I'm not quite sure. A stellar job by Weaver to not destroy the entire right side of his 66 car.
So the Lords of Downforce, we're talking about them. The Lords of iRacing on the sides of Justin Weaver for a second. And sorry to cut you off there, Justin, but I've seen on a number of occasions cars getting that close to the wall. I do wonder, though, as you see from behind, as Tyler Groff, Mike Rigney try to take advantage. I'm suspecting damage to the right front now on the 66 car.
Yeah, especially with the buckling here, and already the speeds drop down to the 21.5s. It's going to put him up for grabs for several drivers really wanting to push and get positions after seeing what happened. He almost hit the wall again.
Almost a bit of a hip check there from Tyler Groff. Rigney down the inside takes advantage. Oh, look at the speed, though, from Justin Weaver. He's not going to sit down and take this one lying down. Back up into 15th position, but now must be what's looking like a rather long and disappointing day for him, as he will struggle to hold on to 15th position. Back up in toward the top 10. That's Aaron Morgan in what seems to be a patchwork-colored machine now. Right behind the Canadian Andrew Kinsella, who has fallen off the back of Mike Rasmussen by about half a second. Kinsella's Canadian compatriot Brian Carey in 10th. Connor Harrington, the best of the private label Team Hype cars, in 11th. Interesting little fact here, Justin. When Canada gets back to normal and you can get back to the tracks and start calling races again, you are in the same neck of the woods as Brian Carey, and he was rather surprised to find out that you're the local track commentator at Sarnia.
Over at Delaware Speedway, in fact, just outside of London, Ontario. So it's always intriguing to call the real-world events, and especially for drivers to find out, oh, hey, I didn't realize you called events there. Once they get to discussing things, it's an interesting atmosphere, a unique atmosphere to be able to call races in the short track level, and many drivers across Ontario course compete in the same rings of tracks like Fairbury, or not Fairbury, like Flamborough, or you also have Jacasa Speedway in the grouping. Many different circuits across the short track level that the best of the best drivers race at. And some of the drivers, cool drivers like DJ Kennington, like many of the short track legends across the entire railroad community, and many of them actually race on iRacing, Arjuna, as well, to be able to gain experience in their short track machines, and in some cases try and venture out.
I was reading today a great quote from Parker Kligerman, who of course increases his iRacing involvement, it seems, by the day, and he was saying the first time that he sat behind the wheel of an Xfinity car, and I think it was even on pole position, if I remember reading the quote correctly, he was thinking, I've only been in about 60 races in the real world, but I've done thousands in the virtual world, so that gave him the confidence and the correct mindset that I can challenge this and I can beat someone like Kyle Busch. So the racing that you can do on the iRacing.com service is fantastic, and for someone like Sage Karam, he is taking part in the NTT IndyCar Open test that is taking place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway today, but he has been an iRacing member since the very early days. You want to know how early? His iRacing ID, if I'm remembering correctly, is in and around the 15,000s. I was doing some, let's call it experimenting with some of my RaceSpot TV colleagues a couple of days ago, and we found out that some of the first IDs that were issued to actual paying customers, as they were, was in the 15,000 range. So Sage Karam, one of, I think, the first 400 iRacing users, illustrates just how long drivers have been using this service to try and improve in the real world. Justin, we are halfway through this race now, working lap 105 out of 200. Gap for the race lead down to 0.3 of a second through traffic. And I tell you what, Jason Galvin is a man on a mission today.
And I don't blame him, especially with the logos on his car. He talked about with drivers on the series' Discord earlier on today that the charity means a ton to him and his family. And this racetrack, as talked about, is big to him and his family. So this would be a huge race for Galvin. Remember, a one-time runner-up here at this racetrack. That was back in Season 6 in the race where Brian Yazek came away with the victory by just 0.4 of a second. So if he can try and take this lead and try and run away with the help of this traffic here, it'd be huge for the later stages of this race, especially with Galvin having one of his best races so far this season.
But yeah, you can see the struggle that Blocker currently has to try and get past this lap traffic. I believe that's Matt Houston in the number 99 car that is in 27th position, fighting to stay on the lead lap. Just doing enough in terms of feeding dirty air, Justin. And as we work lap 47 of the stint for the race leaders, there is almost nothing that your defending series champion can do at this point.
And that has to be extremely frustrating, and definitely is extremely frustrating, because the only way you're essentially making the moves, at least for now it seems, is if drivers give some space and let you go. And that's the tough part. It's only a couple tenths of a second difference from some of the drivers at the front of the field compared to the back of the field. It's very even. So in other words, you're going to have to hope for some trust, like right there from James Paulson, for example, that these drivers will give you the space if you catch up to them.
So Blocker on through, Galvin slides on through turn 2. Sage Karen, by the way, in our YouTube chat, Justin, saying, "Come on, Galvin." And I'm sure there's no thinking about that championship. We had Sage Karam on the RaceBot TV podcast a couple of weeks ago. As a cautious out, James Grahula gets mixed up with who was that second car, Justin?
Paulson, who had just let by the top 2, keep in mind. He ended up going way too low on the apron.
So we'll spool up the RaceBot TV replay machine once more, and you can see Paulson coming through turn 3 here. Is going to let on through your race leaders, tries to work through that dirty air, just a bit too aggressive on the turn and down onto the apron, and watch the slide up the track as James Grahula has nowhere to go, and from a podium position up almost 20 spots in today's race. It's an unfortunate end for the Sim Racing Merch Esports driver then, Justin.
That's got to be heartbreaking and very frustrating if you're Grahula and just nowhere to go, where he's already committed to his line and he doesn't expect someone to just go down to the very bottom of the flat, basically, and spin it up the racetrack. There's no time for him to try and react to this. Like, take a look. Even with the lockdown, that car is just sliding hard up the racetrack right to Grahula's path.
It's one of those things where you make a decision inside or outside, and before you know if it was the right decision, the outcome has already happened. We'll take one more look at it, at the aerial look brought to us by ATVO, the graphical partners at RaceBot TV, as pit road once more is a very busy place, Justin. Third caution of the day, and this is one more opportunity for a fresh tank of fuel and fresh tires.
And a chance for things to potentially settle down for some of the leaders and get some clean air back for Blocker, just as he was again in the midst of that traffic. And they were right at the range to have to come down and pit at that mark either way. So they had to all come down at this point. The only driver who hasn't ducked down is Samuel Ryman, who, well, has to come down, to say the very least.
He's just trying to get the point for leading a lap. That's what he's doing, and that's what will happen as we cross the start-finish line. Ryman scored in the race lead. And you know who is the biggest loser in this situation, Justin? It is Ryan Otis, who is currently waiting to get cycled through from the pace car. Came down onto pit road, of course, about 23 laps ago, and if we go green to the end, finds himself in a very uncomfortable position.
It puts him in a very awkward situation and then some, because if my math is right, he can still make it on one stop. But the problem is, he's going to be 23 laps off cycle. He had already been struggling with the back-end grip as the run went on compared to his fellow competitors. That's in part where he lost that lead. Had to really back it on down in the corners compared to Blocker and Galvin. And now, he essentially has to hope things work out strategy-wise. It's a tough box to put himself in, but it's one where if things play out right, he can still recover from this. The thing is, he needs it to play out near perfectly right. Because if there's a caution after he pits again, then the box ends up becoming that much more difficult to break out of.
I get what you mean, and he cycles back through. Lights are off on the pace car then. Adam Blocker leads from Jason Galvin, Christopher, Brian Beard, and Andrew Kinsella. Adrenaline Motorsports, they have 3 of their cars in the top 5, and they're all going to score points as well for different teams in that team's championship. Very, very good day for them. The private label Team Hype boys, they're 9th, 11th, and 12th respectively, so they have benefited from some of this strategy. Harrington is up 7 positions. Joshua Chin is up 6. Unfortunately, Jason Brophy is down 5, and not the day that the rookie would have hoped for. Back to green flag, though, we are about to go. It's once more Adam Blocker at the front of your field as the safety car back down onto the safety of pit road, and for the 5th time today, the green flag flies in the thumbs up, cancer down, Phoenix 200, and you can already see very good jump from Andrew Kinsella, and that's what he's been looking for, Justin, to try and get the move done on Brian Beard, and Kinsella is up into the top 4 now.
And now it's the question, how can he get up to Christopher here? Because at this point, you talked about wanting to get that job done. Made it look fairly easy, but it's easier than done to try and defend here with all these drivers looking to be very aggressive here, knowing it's just a one-stopper to the end on gas, and it's going to be an interesting one-stopper to keep that in mind. Offset by about 10 laps is that window.
Beard is going up and down the track trying to block the run from Morgan, then from Razmas, feeds dirty air to both of them. That enables Razmas to try and get the move done around the outside on Aaron Morgan. 2 wide, 2 deep across the start-finish line as Connor Harrington tries to make it 3 wide for a moment. Oh, this is a crazy restart, Justin, and look at those private label Team Hype machines trying to take advantage.
Harrington's seen the perfect window to get to that outside. I believe he may have scraped a little bit of that side pond against the safer barrier, though. Just cost him the momentum he needed to get by Jay Brandt. And now they're stuck behind Mike Rasmus, as well as that Jeff Gordon Rainbow Warriors paint scheme Aaron Morgan's with.
I like that. That's much better than the patchwork description I put it. Back at the front, though, it's 2/10 of a second, separating your race leaders. Christopher, 6/10 back in third, and then the third Adrenaline Motorsports car in the top 4, Andrew Kinsella in 4th, trying to hunt down the podium positions. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back here on RaceSpot TV after these messages from our partners. Welcome back to the Phoenix International Raceway and the Thumbs Up Cancer Down Phoenix 200 presented by Minus 273. We are working lap 127 out of 200 here in the desert for round 3 of the Lionheart IndyCar Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. Alongside is Justin Prince. We've got TV cameras presented by Istvan Ballo and TrackCams22.com. Additional car cameras provided by RaceBot's own Tyler Maxson. You can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading on over to timing71.org and following along using their world-class suite of data analysis tools. Under that advertisement break, Justin, the gap out front has extended. 0.6 of a second now separates Adam Blocker and Jason Galvin. Christopher and Andrew Kinsella are struggling very much to follow them in behind.
That clean air has been critical all night long, but the main thing has been Jason Galvin is keeping up with Adam Blocker, the best we've seen all night for anyone who's been trailing behind your race leader. He's been trying to go lockstep to try and keep up with Blocker, having the race of his season so far, looking for his first win since Kansas in Season 8.
And out of the 36 cars that took to the green flag, we are now out. 8 cars have now retired from this race. The most recent, of course, James Krahula and James Poulsen. Poulsen spinning it in front of Krahula, coming out of turn 4. Krahula losing out on what appeared to be a potential podium position for the number 4 car. Adam Fraser, Brian Greenlee, Joe Hassett, Scott Holmes, and Chris Fowler, along with Ricky Harding, the other cars that will not make it to the end of this race. You can see gaps are starting to form even further now between Galvin and Christopher. You have to go all the way back to this group of cars. Mike Rasmussen back here, Justin, to really find a group of cars. And it's where you find our championship leaders in the team standings having a very tough day.
It's gotten better as the race has gone on, as they've gotten good pit stops, been able to pick off drivers in the restarts. But it's just, again, the nature of the racetrack, that difficult to be able to charge up fully. And it's going to be important for them to nail their strategy to be able to, I think, leapfrog a couple drivers to be able to get a solid finish overall. I think that's got to be the focus now, is get a solid finish, nail that pit stop, because we are approaching that window in under 20 laps before we get the green light for drivers to make it on fuel. And I'm intrigued to see who tries to undercut it and try and go a little bit more longer for some of the others to be able to underfuel the car.
I think strategy always so interesting, and we saw it the last time the Lionheart Speedway Series was racing at the Texas Motor Speedway, Justin. As we see here, it's going to be Jay Brandt looking to the inside, trying to send it down the inside and going to make it look very easy on Aaron Morgan. Connor Harrington will slip it down the inside as well. Chin as well. Oh, and Aaron Morgan has lost out 3 positions in the course of just half a lap there.
Well, they've seen the opportunity to lick the stamp. Well, they sent it, and it was received in the mail properly. Brian Carey also taking advantage as a result there. Aaron Morgan struggling here all of a sudden. So this has worked out perfectly for those drivers, but that's just how you have to play this out, is wait for your opportunities to capitalize on other people's mistakes or over-aggressiveness, and we're seeing that now from a couple of these drivers in this line.
And this is the strongest we've seen Harrington so far today. Looks to the inside on Jay Brandt, trying to get up into the top 7. Already up 8 positions on the day so far, but Jay Brandt holds firm. And as they cross the start-finish line to complete lap 136 in their race, it's still Brandt in 7th, Harrington in 8th. Fascinating race. Strategy not the only thing as well here, Justin. It's been some very impressive just passes in terms of confidence from drivers to really send it either down to the inside or the outside. And, you know, as we approach those last 50 laps and those last opportunities for passes to happen, it's not going to be the half-hearted passes that really make you any friends here, because as we've seen on a couple of occasions today, those are the type of passes that really cause contacts,
And you need to have the preparation in turn, Arjuna, have the confidence. There was a great phrase utilized by one of the people I was talking with earlier today from my own organization, in fact, where they mentioned speed comes from repetition. And if you try those moves over and over, try and see what sticks, try to see what doesn't stick, try and get lap after lap to try and work in both traffic, try and utilize both the top and bottom lines to see what will happen in race situations, that's a good spot to know, okay, I can make this stick to make the pass work. And I think that's where some of these passes in turn have come into play for drivers to know, okay, if I send it in as hard as this is here, I know I'm going to have the downforce for this to work, or I'm going to be able to make this proper pass. But it's all coming down to that preparation.
Aaron Morgan, by the way, I think he's hit the wall, taken some damage on. He's all the way back in 20th position now. Has lost another position to Stefan Larkamp. Oh, Homos touches the wall once more for good measure potentially there, as he tries to hold on. Very, very disappointing. At the point once more, Justin, where we start to think about lap traffic becoming a factor. See in front of your race leader. That is, I do believe, Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That is about to be lap traffic. No, excuse me, sorry. That's Richie Hearn. 2 pink cars. I always sometimes struggle to identify them.
Yeah, in various series, we've seen Richie Hearn in the pink machines. He's been in silver machines. It's gone from series to series. It gets interesting on the paint schemes, but for Richie Hearn, I don't see him point a factor. In fact, move straight to the bottom. It's going to be once they get up to Justin Weaver or Samuel Ryman, who is way up the track, where the traffic's going to really play into a factor here, because we've seen how much pace Blocker fell off once he reached the tail end of the last train of lap cars. This could open up and turn that undercut window for drivers once they reach the traffic to try and stay out of that bubble, at least for the time being, because I think that undercut could be powerful here based on what we've seen today.
We are approaching the window where one more caution and, a caution, and that might be one of the final pit stops. We haven't seen tires being so key, and so, you know what, if I'm someone who wants a first race victory in the Lionheart IndyCar Series, why not risk it, Justin? And why not try something different? You can't afford to come down under green. I'm not suggesting anything preposterous like that. However, if we get a couple more cautions today, I do foresee the potential for drivers to try something different, cycle themselves to the front, just like we saw someone like Jason Galvin do early in the race. He's up 13 positions. Look at the likes of Callisto and Beard, up 17 and 20 positions respectively.
It's worked out very well, especially for Beard, who has played a very safe race since then to be able to keep himself clean. But it was the gamble Galvin had to take, and it was within one lap, remember, of it not working out. That caution doesn't come out when it did. He likely comes down to pit. We don't see him up towards the front. We potentially see Christopher in the situation Galvin is slotted into positioning. So this has been very well timed as well for this to be executed. We talked about needing to have everything work out well strategy-wise. Well, it's worked out very well strategy-wise for Galvin all race. And I can definitely tell that Sage Karam is going to be having those pom-poms out for strategy to continue to work out for Galvin and, well, everyone else in the top 10.
He's in the YouTube chat talking about lap traffic, undercuts the whole 9 yards, blocker to the inside of Justin Weaver. So there's one lap traffic car that's not going to be a factor, but now they are getting onto the tail end of the field. That's when they'll get into the likes of Samuel Ryman, Ryan Otis, Matt Houston, Joe Branch, Henry Bennett. They are 21st through 25th respectively, and that's when things will start getting interesting. Working lap 38 of the stint though, Justin, so, you know, we're only about 12 or 14 laps or so between getting to the final set of pit stops and, you know, really making sure that you nail your entry and exits onto pit road and into the box as well.
And I've seen in several cases Arjuna drivers spinning out, trying to send it in as hard as they can, and if anyone locks up the brakes or ends up snapping around, it can cause a situation we've seen at Twin Ring Motegi before in Lionheart action this season, where it can be a bottleneck effect with the pit road entry. So drivers are going to need to have that preparation as well to see, okay, how fast can I send this in without spinning it around or snapping it in front or be in trouble, as I believe we may see some stops coming in. Brian Beard has opened up the window.
So very interesting. That is an early stop, and he's going to go down a lap here under green flag cautions, pit stops, excuse me. So it's not really what I thought would happen. I thought it would be the other way, where drivers would maybe take a couple more pit stops over the course of the next 50 laps rather than diving down so early, Justin.
You have to wonder again if that's just trying to get himself at least something different to try and get this victory, or at least try and gain some positions. But here's the gamble again, is if you have the caution flag, he's going to be forced to take the wave. He's already lost about a lap already in this sequence. As there's the caution!
Oh my word, once more it's drama during the pit stop window. Samuel Ryman, Matt Houston. Oh no, team race versus own. Down onto pit road, and I think for the 5th time today, we return to caution flag conditions. RaceBot TV replay is up on the screen, and it's coming out of turn 4. Houston, just up into the wall all by himself, and Samuel Ryman nowhere to go, Justin, as Houston came on down.
Just struggled off that corner exit and up in the marbles, I believe, as well, as he just slid right to the edge of that safer barrier. And for Samuel Ryman, his guess was get to the bottom. Unfortunately, Houston was trying to get towards the bottom himself with that car already destroyed on the right side suspension. A huge caution flag. That's going to make things very interesting in how the rest of this race plays out as a result, as everybody can make it on field from here.
And everyone is down on pit road as well. There is not one car that is staying out there. Look at the pink machine that scampers through. Back to live pictures and take a look at the cars coming down onto pit road for what might be their most important stop. Jason Galvin up on the jacks for what might be the final time as well. Off the tracks he rolls. Who's going to win this race off of pit lane? Adam Blocker is in that prime position to jump off the jacks. He will be first. Galvin in second. Stouffer in third. Kinsella in fourth, and I think Connor Harrington has worked his way up into 6th, along with Joshua Chin in 8th, and their teammate Jason Brophy in 10th. So the private label team hype machine now, guys, well, they're all in the top 10, Justin.
And this is where that pit stop experiences come in. They've been some of the quickest in the pit lane all day. And now it's the focus of getting the solid points. If they can nail an solid restart, I think there's a chance that we may see one of them in the top 5, especially with how things have worked out around Jay Brandt, for example. But the main thing when it came to Blocker getting that advantage there is that first pit box. Having to roll just a couple feet to that green cone is such an advantage here at this racetrack compared to Galvin, who has to pit at the start of the curve.
Have you seen the state of Samuel Ryman's car, Justin?
Wow. I'm surprised he's driving it around here.
You could see the left front kind of decides once in a while that it can rotate normally. He will 100% have to come down onto pit road. There are a number of cars as well that find themselves, one lap down waiting for a wave around. There is Adam Blocker. He is the 6th car in line. I do wonder if Ryman is down this time or if he's going to try and wait to get this damage repaired, Justin, because I don't think there's a way that he's going to stay on the lead lap here.
Yeah, there's no way he can keep on going, especially with that left front tire essentially ready to fly off the car. As there it is right there to be able to come in. I think it's just a matter of having the pit lane open as well as to try and have that extra lap just in case on the rest of the competitors to make sure he's scored in front of a couple others like Houston and a couple of our machines. But to emphasize this is going to be the most important restart of the race, potentially, Arjuna. Because if Galvin times it perfectly and tries to make a pass for the lead, it could be huge. If Blocker times it up right, there's a chance he can try and pull away.
And so, like you say, one of the most important restarts, and we're only in the 3rd race of the season. Adam Blocker looks for his 2nd race victory this season, trying to punch his ticket towards a 4th consecutive Lionheart IndyCar Championship. Jason Galvin, with the thumbs up, cancer down onboard camera, wants to take victory here today, but he's got an almighty challenge on his hands, and he's got 2 Adrenaline Motorsports cars lying behind him, ready to take advantage. Back to green flag running. We hopefully go for the final time today here in the Thumbs Up Cancer Down Phoenix 200 presented by Minus 273. It's a very long hold here from Adam Blocker. This might enable those Adrenaline Motorsports teammates, Justin, to get the jump down in towards turn number 3.
Bit of a check there, but well timed for Blocker, expected there, but what a big roost as the caution's out.
Oh, and it's a big one. Reagan and I think Luis Gonzalez Nunez is involved, so we will re-rack and do this once more. Replay up on your screen, Justin, and let's take a look at what happened. You can see there is Christopher Reagan. Oh, he just stumbles on the scene of the incident and nowhere to go. We'll have to jump onto his onboard here and see if we can pick up what happens.
And a couple drivers were struggling off the restart here, but I believe there was a car already that lost his back wing. That is Nunez who I think got actually hit by Reagan off the start. We'll have to see this right here. Keep an eye on the exit of turn 4, where Christopher Reagan actually, in a check right about here, ends up hitting the back end. That sheds off Nunez's back wing, and that essentially takes all the downforce off that car by the time they're in turn 1.
Yeah, there is no way that car is going to be able to enter the corner. You can see Reagan as well missing a whole heap of his front wing on the left-hand side. Spool this one up further one more time, Justin. We'll take a look from the aerial look at that checkup. And I think Adam Blocker, who held the field for oh so long, I wonder if Race Control will take a look at that restart.
And drivers in their practice restarts in similar situations had incidents like this too. And that's why there are several different attempts on restart procedure before these races to make sure you have that awareness. But that's the tough thing when you stack the box, is it ends up in turn causing trouble at the back end of the line.
And you noticed it, by the way, under the last caution period, Justin. Fuel burning. Well, it has become the name of the game here. You can hear these Dallara IR-18s singing in unison as the drivers at the front of the field try and burn off some of that fuel that they took on under the last caution.
And the reason they're burning the fuel, keep in mind, is the lighter the car, the quicker it goes. So that's why drivers are trying to burn up the extra fuel that they may have had in the tank, and in turn try and have that car go that extra little bit faster. But you have to think about it this way as well. This is a second chance for everybody in the field to try and have a leap at Blocker. They know what Blocker did the first time. Does Blocker try it again, or does Blocker switch it up? Is going to be the critical point on how this restart plays out once we get back going green.
What would you do, Justin? You're Adam Blocker in this situation. You've got, give or take, about 35 laps to hold on here. Do you wait or do you go?
I think, based on how things have played out, I would honestly wait again, potentially, and try and play it out that way. Because it seemed Blocker did a stellar job and had the clean air still before. It's just a matter of how does Galvin get the run off the corner. So I think I try it again and try and hope that in turn you have a bigger check as a result there with Galvin not able to get as big of a run on the second opportunity. I would try it potentially as the second opportunity. Just hope you do it well and have it timed up properly.
So we should be getting back to green flag the next time around. Justin, just correct my math if I'm wrong. Is that the 6th caution of the day so far?
I believe so, give or take. So we are approaching that mark. Have to say, we've had some long green flag runs today. The attrition's really come into play at the very tail end of the fuel windows.
It has been. And I think maybe just difficulty in terms of controlling the car as well. Reminder, by the way, if you want to follow us along for more esports action, stay involved at Lionheart Series to stay up to date with 3 different open wheel competitions on the iRacing.com service. ESTV, of course, to follow along with all of your favorite esports action. And then RaceSpot TV. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit the bell next to that button as well to get notified every single time we go live with some of the great sim racing series we get to cover. Lots more American Open Wheels coverage coming this summer as well. The month of May, days away, from getting underway. Much better jump from Adam Blocker this time around as we get back to green flag conditions with 37 laps left on the clock and 37 miles left for drivers to try and make something work then, Justin.
What a run, though, for Galvin coming out of turn 2 that time to close up a 5-car length gap down to just 2. And there he is right there trying to get that clean air, trying to build up enough of a run to try and utilize those different lines and find some air.
It's not him making a move, though. First, it's Harrington trying to get to the inside of Jay Brandt. Almost contact between the two of them. Behind them as well, Harrington's teammate Joshua Chin slips down the inside of Mike Razmas. The private label Team Hype boys, they did not enjoy the best start to this race. They are fighting back strong as it looks like Samuel Ryman back down onto pit road. Damage clearly not repaired on his car. 5/10 separates the top 2. 4/10 separates second and third here, Justin. And I think, you know what, if it's going to happen, it's got to happen soon.
Yeah, this is going to be very difficult. We've seen all day that Blocker's been able to build up a distance once he gets into clean air. If they reach traffic, that could be the most pivotal moment of this race because that may allow Galvin the opportunity to try to find different lines. Right now, though, I'm curious on how that fuel burn may have worked during the caution flag periods, because if they burned enough, that could also allow the opportunity to have enough straight line speed to try and close in that little bit and try and counteract it a little bit.
To 5 cautions on the day, by the way. So that would, if we stay green to the end, and I'm knocking on all the wood I can around me, be the lowest in series history and one of the longest races that we've had at this track as well. Oh no, come on, caution flag is out. What type of commentator's curse is that? And I believe it's Tony Schowen that is down on pit road. So the Adrenaline Motorsports black driver will not score points for the second race week in a row, Justin. And we've got a RaceSpot TV replay to go and take a look at. Catch the tail end of that one there. That looks like a solo car incident.
Yeah, just went from the middle of the racetrack all the way down underneath the apron. Have to keep an eye on the onboard here, as that car just went sailing hard to the back, lost the back end.
Too much weight, Jacker. That's what it looks like. And
has to be.
His teammate Adam Blocker will not have been thrilled with that one. Back to live, let's go. Under caution for, as confirmed, the 6th time today. Engines singing in unison once more as more fuel burning goes on, and drivers have to be careful at this point, Justin. You can't actually burn as aggressively as you used to anymore. There is a much more aggressive cutoff in terms of the power cycle and the way it delivers power when the engine actually heats up here. And I do wonder, if we keep getting these cautions at this point, how much can drivers actually push their engines? And if you're Jason Galvin, at what point are you risking blowing up your motor?
I think if I'm Jason Galvin, I'm keeping an eye on the temperatures, absolutely, to make sure you know the limitations, because it can be very difficult to properly get the fuel burn done, in my opinion, at least, because you burn too much, it puts you in a situation where you might run out of gas. You also want to keep your engines fairly cool here, so I think he's going to have to be careful, to say the very least. And this is where, again, experience comes into play to know where those limits are.
Funny story about fuel burning that I've just actually remembered. Jason Galvin, well, his first ever Lionheart Retro Series win came because the man that is behind him on track right now, Chris Stouffer, blew up his engine in what was then a very brand new Lotus 79 to the iRacing.com service. Stouffer, unaware of what the engine temps for that car were meant to be. And, well, just a little bit of an interesting situation that I'm remembering there, Justin. And right now, 30 laps to go. We're in that point now where there's not going to be lap traffic that's going to be a factor. So if Galvin's going to get it done, he's going to have to get it done by himself.
It's going to have to be the biggest launch he's had off of turn 2 all race if he wants to get side by side at the very minimum to Blocker. And that's been the very difficult part, because we've seen several times today, if Galvin gets the inside, he's struggled to make the pass. You need to almost necessarily get to the top line, because that's allowed drivers to pinch down on the corner exits, the drivers underneath them, and force the drivers below to check up. So, if I'm Galvin, you basically have to time this up perfectly to get to Blocker.
I wonder if Blocker will hold them once more. Lights are off on the pace car, so for the 7th time today, green flag is about to fly. And I'm not saying, Justin, that I feel pretty good in my prediction here for Blocker, but in an unfamiliar environment, he's now got an opportunity to take a second victory on the season. With Sage Karam watching on from the sidelines, this is Blocker in his element, and a race victory, that he very much needs to secure.
This will be very valuable for the standings and the points, absolutely, and would allow him to build up a massive buffer to the rest of his competition with some of the errors with their struggles earlier on today. And some of them still marred to the back end of the top 10. Going to be very critical, though. Karam's best friend is Galvin right now.
And Karam is very much cheering on from Indy. Pace car down then once more here in Phoenix. We've got 29 laps, 28 laps, scratch that, as we come across the line. Once more, a very, very impressive jump from Adam Blocker. Andrew Kinsella is going to feel the pressure from the likes of Connor Harrington from behind. And now we wait and see for over the course of the next 28 miles Who is going to come out on top? Galvin looks to the inside already, trying to get alongside. 2 wheels below the apron, Justin checks up his momentum. Here comes Christopher for second.
And a good ramp there that time for Galvin as Blocker got really tight coming off the corner. Galvin getting really tight again up towards the front. Galvin just seems to be able to get a better launch off turn 2, but the thing is, that clean air is helping Blocker, and Blocker's been really stellar in 3 and 4 all race.
He's just got to hold on now, feed as much dirty air as he can. Jason Galvin working the in-car tools to the best of his ability. With 26 laps to go and another race victory here in the Lionheart IndyCar Series on his mind. It would be an 8th victory for the number 42 car. Adam Blocker, meanwhile, looks to continue his domination in this championship with an incredible 24th victory in just... How many starts is Adam Blocker at now? I've lost track, Justin, but it's
82.
Incredible. That's an incredible winning record.
Absolutely, and just shows again the experience that he's carried across his entire iRace career in terms of open wheel racing. But the thing is, he's utilizing that clean air very well, but the problem is Galvin's the closest he's been to the back end of Blocker off some of these starts. Remember, Blocker's been able to build up a half a second to about a 0.6 of a second buffer after a few laps. Galvin is within 0.2 and closing this gap.
Oh, and he was on song at our season opener at the Virtual Homestead Miami Speedway. Did not enjoy the streets of Long Beach as much. Back on song here, and now just 0.1 of a second behind the defending series champion. Which way does Jason Galvin go? He tries to run the high line, but Adam Blocker sees him coming. That will affect Jason Galvin in terms of the run out of turn 4, but Blocker has to go defensive. Look at the run from the 42. Tries to get to the inside, and Adam Blocker was not sure if he should defend that one.
Yeah, that was a little bit dicey there right now, but it's almost a guessing game to choose which line. Here comes Galvin, though, able to take away Blocker's line.
That's the line that Galvin wanted to run. Around the outside, rips the 42 car up 14 positions. He's into the race lead as we dive our way down into turn 1. Blocker will try and fight it back, but the outside line will feed the momentum back into Jason Galvin's hand. Still side by side, Justin, entering turn number 3.
Galvin needs to clear on by to make sure he tries to run away here. He's timed this up very well. It's been one of his strongest races of this season so far. Finally gets clear, but Blocker's not going to give this up.
He tries to force Galvin to just do something different. 20 miles to go, and Jason Galvin, 14 positions up in this race, now leads, and he sees Adrenaline Motorsports 2, 3, and 4 behind him. Adam Blocker tries to rip the outside line. You can see, though, lap traffic in front, Justin, might actually be more of a factor than we thought it would be.
That's 21st, 22nd. You're referring to Nunez and Weaver, who are struggling a little bit, and that could be very critical. Keep in mind, they are a bit slower down, and Weaver has actually pulled off the racetrack. The difference is about 5 miles an hour between them in the corners compared to your race leaders.
And that was, for the first time, I have never seen Adam Blocker feel so confused in the way he tried to affect the block there, Justin. That was surprising for a driver that usually is so committed and resolute in his defense.
I think Galvin, though, was able to just fake him out. Just made him think he was going to try and lick the stamp with how he's been able to send it into the bottom of the racetrack. Now, it could be one of the biggest moves of the season so far. But there's that traffic. Traffic's actually letting by the race leaders, moving way up to the high side.
Gap between Galvin and Blocker is up to 0.7 of a second right now. Continues to rise up as they fly their way down into turn 1. Speeds in excess of 250 kilometers an hour. It is a sight to behold, the trust that the cars have in the downforce levels right now. As we cross the line, 15 miles to go. Jason Galvin has a lead of 1 full second over the defending series champion. And I have a feeling one hand on this race victory as well, Justin.
2/10 picked up as well. The question is, will it stay green? Not to give the curse. The commentator's curse has been out big time tonight. But the thing is, Galvin's been a man on a mission right from the get-go to try and win, to try and bring that orange and black machine to victory lane. And he's shown that all night with how he's been driving. Unbelievable pace from Galvin.
Unbelievable. And, you know, these ovals are going to be where he tries to get the majority of his points. And Homestead, it was a great run. And once more, now he leads this race. 13 miles to go, as they cross the start-finish line. Looks like Brian Carey and Jason Brophy having a bit of a squabble over 8th and 9th respectively. There you can see out of turn 2, it is Brophy who's managed to get up into 8th position. For the private label Team Hype Machine, they have had to work their way up through the field. Connor Harrington in 5th. He's up 11 positions on the day. Joshua Chin up 7 positions on the day. And as you take a look at the left-hand side of the screen and those movers and shakers cycle you on through, you'll see there are some big names that have worked their way up through the field, including one of our rookies that we talked about early in the show here, Justin, Lionel Callisto, up 23 positions.
Inside the top 10 for one of the first times today, in fact, and there's that preparation. But also just the matter of keeping the car clean has been one of the key parts. Keep yourself out of the attrition. Keep yourself out of the incidents. He's done that. Now, chance for the Sector 5 machine to have a solid points day. They can hold on and not hit the fence.
Good hands there as he hung on to that car, almost seconds from disaster then. Left Mike Razmas, Tyler Graf behind him trying to take advantage. Razmas, not being the easiest second half of the race for the 68 machine, as he's now got Tyler Graf behind. He's down 9 on the day so far. The Graphics LPM car qualified very well and hung around the front for quite a while. Speaking of the front now, 9 miles to go. There is Jason Galvin closing in on Justin Weaver once more, Justin, but the gap between first and second is up to 1.6 seconds, and the importance of clean air, well, we're seeing it right now.
It's been a talking point all race, right from the get-go, and that time, just following the lap traffic for one corner, was enough of a difference of a couple tenths of a second, just about, between Galvin and Blocker. As long as the traffic keeps on yielding, and as long as nothing else is to happen, this is Galvin's race to lose. Perfect race for him played out for the strategy to get the track position, and now things are playing out well. Near contact, though, behind him.
That is what I thought we'd see more of. Outside line for Joshua Chin. OP as the King of Chins up into the top 6. Very much needed position there in that team standings. The championship leaders, of course, private label Team Hype, they will finish 5th and 6th. And their main rivals, Adrenaline Motorsports Red, only Andrew Kinsella scoring in front. Brian Carey in 9th. Behind all 3 of the private label drivers, Henry Bennett will finish this race in 15th, it looks like right now. But 6 miles to go. The gap out front, 2.2 seconds, Justin. We didn't think that it would really be a move at the end of this race, and Jason Galvin did not wait for his opportunity. He's got 4 miles to go now.
He's seen the opportunity to try and make the move, seen that Blocker was vulnerable, and took it. Keep in mind that Blocker talked about thinking about points at Long Beach, for example, and trying to take the points in the solid finish over trying to close in to the back end of Karam in that respective race. You have to wonder if that came into play, knowing how aggressive it was getting to the front and how much Galvin wanted this checkered flag tonight. But with 3 laps to go and 3 miles to go or so, you have to put it this way. This has been a race Galvin will never forget.
It will not be indeed. He took 2 victories last season. One at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. He also took victory in very, very dramatic fashion from the driver that will finish in 2nd place at the Kansas Speedway. The gap there between the 2 of them, well, it was just 0.05 of a second. There was nothing separating them that day, but 1.5 miles left to go for the Thumbs Up Cancer Down board member. It will be, I'm sure, a very emotional post-race interview as he takes the white flag and looks to secure his 8th Lionheart IndyCar Series win. It's been a wild 199 laps so far, but this one will be sweet. This one will be easy. Jason Galvin rounds turns 3 and 4 for the final time. He takes victory in the Thumbs Up Cancer Down Phoenix 200, and for the 8th time in his Lionheart IndyCar Series career, he will head down into HyperX victory lane. What a dramatic race, Justin, and once more the Lionheart IndyCar Series produces some incredible racing action.
And an incredible fight overall for that race win, to be able to push his way to that high line, to be able to take away that run from Blocker in the side-by-side fight. One of those thrilling battles we've seen so far this season, and a huge victory for Jason Galvin.
And I have no doubt he will burn the house down. This track, the first ever home of a Polish victory lap when Alan Kulwicki won back in, I believe it was 1988, but I don't necessarily think Galvin will let that engine survive. Burnouts on the agenda, and he will head his way down into the HyperX victory lane to meet with us in just a few moments' time. What a race, and once more, Justin, just 6 cautions on the day. We tie our lowest ever caution count, and I think what will go down in the history books as one of the most intriguing Lionheart IndyCar races of the recent few years.
Strategy seemed to be the name of the game for much of this race, for the lead side going out with various pit strategies, with various caution flag periods. But overall, it came down to the aggression levels in the closing stages. And how bad did Galvin want this win? We've seen that be the factor, and he got the chance to burn it down in a big race for Thumbs Up Cancer Down.
And it's only fitting as well that the Thumbs Up Cancer Down car takes victory in the Thumbs Up Cancer Down Phoenix 200, presented by Miners 273. Let's go trackside and take a look at our Carnox race results after 200 miles in the desert. It is Jason Galvin that takes his 8th Lionheart IndyCar Series victory, taking almost 2.7s out in those closing couple of laps from the defending series champion, Adam Blocker. Adrenaline Motorsports, they will be fairly content. 3 of their drivers in the top 4. Christopher in 3rd, Andrew Kinsella, the Canadian, in 4th. But it was a recovery drive for the ages for the private label Team Hype. Connor Harrington and Joshua Chin 5th and 6th respectively. They're up 11 positions on the day as well. Jay Brandt, Jason Brophy, Brian Carey, all 1 position down from where they started. And on the edge of the top 10, Lionel Kalisto, one of the rookies to watch out for, up 23 positions. What a drive from the number 97. Mike Razmas for the Graphics LPM team across the line in 11th, very close with his teammate Tyler Groff all the way to the checkered flag. Mike Rigney in the 00 across the line in 13th, along with Henry Bennett in the 007 in 14th. Matt Taylor saw him running up in the field early, got caught out by some cautions, finishes in 15th along with Brian Beard in a very similar position. Ryan Otis 17th, Stefan Larkamp in 18th position, and Aaron Morgan, Ken Hacker rounding out the top 20. Lots of cars that did not make it to the end. Justin Weaver, Richie Hearn, they did make it to the end on pure just willpower. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, one of our first retirees. Then Joe Branch, Matt Houston, Samuel Ryman, Tony Showen, Christopher Reagan, James Grahula, and then James Paulson rounding out the top 30. 6 more cars that did not make it to the end of this race. Adam Fraser, Brian Greenlee, Joe Hassert, Scott Holmes, Ricky Harding, and Chris Fowler. Not such a good day for 2 of the Thumbs Up Cancer Down LPM machines, but a much better day for Jason Galvin in the number 42 car. I think he's already standing by in HyperX victory lane, so let's bring on in your race winner, and Justin Prince is standing by with Jason Galvin.
Jason, in one of the most thrilling battles for the win so far this season, you're able to take the checker flag from the multiple-time champion Adam Blocker. First things first, how does it feel to return to victory lane in a big race for you in Thumbs Up Cancer Down?
Yeah, people are going to listen to this and they're going to wonder what happened to Macho Man Jason Galvin, but I was just telling Chris and my teammates, man, this is so much more emotional than I thought it would be. Thumbs Up Cancer Down means so much to me and my family. And my wife and I are both on the board of directors. You know, we run them on our race car in real life, and they do such awesome work for people battling cancer. And who doesn't know somebody, right? Who hasn't lost somebody to cancer? And you know, I encourage everybody to go to thumbsupcancerdown.com. I've never wanted to race more. You know, I won an iRacing 500 last year, and it didn't feel half as good as this tonight. And the way it happened, you know, I would have loved for Sage to have been here too. But I mean, I had Stouffer and Andrew behind me there on those restarts, and I had to pass Adam Blocker, the track that nobody could really pass at. I mean, that's Christopher just jumped in and was congratulating me about that. And man, I just, you know, I was the announcer at this track for the first IndyCar race back. When they ran the 3 IndyCar races back, I went to ASU. I mean, this is my track. All I've ever wanted to do is win here in Lionheart. I did it in retro once. I've been so close in IndyCar, and to do it in the thumbs up race, in the thumbs up car. I mean, I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful.
Of course, it was an aggressive battle to be able to get there, Jason, to be able to make the move. Talk us through that fight after that final restart between you and Adam to secure this win.
Yeah, for whatever reason all week, even in the practice races, I got through 1 and 2 better than it felt like anybody, and I didn't want to be overconfident coming into the race, but it just felt like I could get through 1 and 2 better. And once I got behind Adam, I jokingly texted him good win when he beat me out of pit road. I got cut off coming out of pit road. It wasn't worth getting in a wreck on pit road, so the car coming in, I let go and I gave up the lead, and I was like, well, that's the race. And then once we got going, it took me a while to figure out Adam's line. He ran a really unique line, and dude, Adam's so good. I don't need to tell anybody that. Like, Adam's the man, right? Adam is the man in these cars in this league, and it took me a while to figure out his line, but I was able. For whatever reason, I went up on the weight jacker a little bit higher than I'd gone all race, and I got a wicked run off of 3 and 4 and set him up in 1 and 2 once and couldn't close the deal. And I said, man, if I could just get that run one more time, instead of trying to pass him in 1 and 2, I'm going to back off and see if I can't get him to overdrive it. And I don't know that he necessarily overdrove the corner in 1 and 2, but I definitely was able to get another good run off the corner. And I was stunned, honestly, that he gave me the outside in 3 and 4. I don't think I would have been able to make the move on the bottom. I really don't. But he gave me the high line, and I was able to, kind of crowd him a little bit there. That's just what you do at this track in those corners. Adam and I have had some really good races on short tracks, man, and Andrew and Chris for that matter, too. Iowa last year. I think back to Milwaukee 2 years ago when Adam and I had a photo finish at Milwaukee, which you just don't do at that track in this car. So they always race me so clean, and I'm grateful for that. It's just a great night, great battle.
Well, Jason, I'm just going to jump in here. I heard your emotion there in the answer to the first question. Let's just dial down in on what Thumbs Up Cancer Down does and all of the work that you put in there, because I'm sure it must be crazy emotional to have them sponsoring the race, you running their car as well, to take victory in a dramatic fashion like this. Viewers can head on over to the Thumbs Up Cancer Down website to donate to fund a power-up pack as we all try to put our thumbs up to knock cancer down. What can people do to get involved? How can they stay in touch? Give us all of these details.
Yeah, Arjuna, thank you so much for that. thumbsupcancerdown.com. On social media, we have a Facebook and Instagram, a Twitter as well. You can find us at Thumbs Up Cancer Down. There's links on the Lionheart website. We create these power-up packs. I'm sure you guys talked about it, but they're packs that go to cancer patients. There's so many great cancer charities. They raise money. They're trying to find a cure. They get people housing. They get them rides. So Thumbs Up, what I love about them is they thought outside the box. They thought, how can we help people receiving treatment? And so these power-up packs go for free to cancer patients, mainly in Central California, but we'll ship them in the United States. So if you know somebody battling cancer right now that could use one of these packs, go to thumbsupcancerdown.com, and at the top you can request a power-up pack. I'd also love if you can make a donation. $25 will fund packs. You'll put smiles on multiple cancer patients' faces. And just real quick, the packs have all the things that a cancer patient needs when they're sitting alone in a chemotherapy room. They've got a blanket and a beanie that's sensitive to the sensitivity of their skin, because they lose their hair and their skin gets very sensitive, so it's made of a material that's sensitive to that. It has phone chargers for your phones. It's got a journal, hand sanitizer, which is even more important today than it ever was. It comes in this great roll-up bag. So those are just some of the great things that come in a power-up pack. Again, thumbsupcancerdown.com. And I just want to thank everybody at Lionheart, HyperX, Butt Kicker, Race Spot, Midwest Simulations, Global Electronic Technology for their support of Thumbs Up Cancer Down. I made a real jerk of myself in the Speedway Series a couple weeks ago, and the league stood behind me and this charity. And I want to apologize to the admin team and thank them and George and Zaldo for standing behind this charity, because everybody knows how much it means to me. So thank you guys so much. Man, I can't believe we won at Phoenix!
Go celebrate, Jason. Great to hear your excitement, and hopefully everyone heads on over to Thumbs Up Cancer Down to get involved as well. What an emotional victory that was, and so emotional that I forgot, Justin, that we are in the HyperX post-race show. So let's just give everyone that reminder. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. Doesn't look as though we will get Adam Blocker in for an interview today. Obviously not racing from the comforts of home. He is at Indiana for the NTT IndyCar Open test. And now let's bring in Indiana's own Chris Stouffer with a very much needed third place finish there. And Chris, a podium that I think you'll be very happy about after missing last time out on the streets of Long Beach.
Yeah, I'll take third any day of the week for sure, especially after, start of the season at Homestead. Made a bad move there. It cost me the race, and then I'm missing Long Beach, which is one of my favorite tracks. It feels good to get third, get back on the podium, kind of feel like I'm getting back on track.
It was a race, Chris, where it was very, very hard to pass, and you ended up where you qualified. You did get the jump early on Mike Razmas down into turn one at the start. How important was that in your mind, and just how difficult did you find it to try and work those in-car tools, to try and make some moves happen?
I was trying a lot of stuff with all my in-car tools for pretty much half the race. Getting below him there at the initial start of the race, that was huge because passing was very difficult tonight. As you could see when the leader got up front, I guess everybody but Galvin was wasn't able to keep up with the leader. I mean, Galvin was able to stay right there on blocker the whole time, but I just found it very difficult to keep up with the leader, and it was track position was king tonight, and it meant a lot. So I was just able to keep it up front and keep it out of trouble. So it's always good.
Well, next time out, we head to upstate New York for a race at Watkins Glen. What are your thoughts about that one? Of course, this is a series that we mostly raced on the ovals. You said you missed one of your favorite road courses at Long Beach. What are your thoughts about Watkins Glen?
I'm very confident in Watkins Glen. Turned a lot of laps there, and I've been really practicing on the road side of